Around a year or so ago, my father and I set out on a long journey to build a 2-story single-port garage for our backyard. The purpose of building this was not to use it as a garage, but as a shop for both of our projects, because there just isn't enough room in the house and the normal connected garage to the house for the both of us. But if you want to hear about the actual building, I included that in my members-only content. However, I thought that our situation with the personal electric cement mixers was stupid enough to be entertaining to those who want to hear a story. So here it goes. The whole thing started when we picked up a personal electric mixer from my grandpa. It was much older, obviously very used. He got it from one of his neighbors who was in some sort of construction, or at least did some extensive construction on his own property. We turned on the mixer for a minute or two while we were there, just to test it and see if it worked properly, and it seemed to. This unit had proper wheels for transporting on a tow hitch, so we took the back roads from my grandpa's house using his truck and towed it home. A couple of days later, we got fully prepared enough to start mixing. The mixer is old enough that it doesn't have an on-off switch. It just goes when you plug it in. So we plug it in and get it going. But luckily, before we had any concrete opened, or even worse, in the mixer, something went wrong with the mixer. Who could have seen this coming, right? I don't remember exactly how it went down, but based on what I do remember, it probably was a loud clanging with the mixer bowl or crucible or whatever it's called slowing in its rotation. The long of this part of the story short is that there is a big wheel that has a belt connected to another smaller wheel. The big wheel refused to stay on the center shaft. I don't think we ever fully figured out why, but it seemed like it had a few things working against its just intended purpose. But basically it wasn't usable, and now we needed to find another solution. We were all prepared to get started on this major project, and now we have been ultimately thwarted. I think that my dad saw a guy using a Harbor Freight personal powered mixer in a YouTube video while researching about how to do the whole process of building our foundation for our project, because I really don't remember how he would have gotten the idea otherwise, but our next solution was to buy a mixer locally, and that was our first choice. Unfortunately, we were caught at an even worse time because our RAV4 had something wrong with it that we didn't feel comfortable using it normally, and my mom had the other car, which probably couldn't even have actually fit a boxed mixer or mixer in general, since it is just a Honda Civic. We asked my grandpa to take us in his truck to go and pick it up. We went, we bought the mixer, we brought it home, which were conveniently placed on the same shelves just a little ways down the aisle. We were talking about getting a drill press for a while, so I stopped and checked them out. I ended up seeing one that was a bit more affordable than most of the other options on Amazon or even some of the other hardware online sites, but that is a side detail that we will leave there for now. We got the mixer home with help from my grandfather. I guess this is common amongst personal mixers, but when you buy them new, you need to assemble the mixer. We started doing so and quickly came across a major issue. Again, it's hard for me to remember exactly what was wrong since it took place so long ago, but from what I remember, the base frame of the whole assembly was bent, or something wasn't welded right, at least because the parts were not fitting together. If I remember right, there was the base frame, and then there was an upper part that enabled the pouring action of the assembly, but the pouring mechanism couldn't go onto the frame due to the frame being out of square beyond usability. So now we're really in a hard place. My dad didn't want to ask my grandpa to drive us again, but we're really stuck. So against better judgment and without a better solution, we loaded up the mixer into the RAV and drove it back to the Harbor Freight again. We returned the first mixer and exchanged it for another of the exact same model. This time we checked it in the store, or at least tried. It was packed semi-tight and was not easy to pull out and repack again. So we looked at it the best we could, confirmed that it looked good, and brought it home in our clunky at the time RAV4. We unpacked it and found that it has the exact same issue. The frame was sitting either diagonally or vertically in the box, I can't remember exactly, but because of the way that it was sitting and the fact that it was wedged through a big piece of styrofoam, the side of the frame that was showing looked good. However, the side inside of the box that we couldn't see without actually unpacking the whole thing was still bent. I don't remember the exact course of our next actions taken. I think the first thing that we did was just try to make it work. We tried our damnedest to assemble the mixer with the fault, because logically, if we could get the mixer assembled, it could still function. So we went through this process of doing so. We struggled, but eventually we got the pouring arm / mechanism, whatever, on the frame, but only somewhat. We got it so that it was sitting on the frame, but of course not perfectly. Unfortunately, having the pouring arm sitting on the frame this way affected how the basin or bowl, whatever it's called, how it spinned, making it uneven and just generally would probably degrade or break down one way or another much faster than it should or normally would have. Basically, we just still couldn't trust it. It just didn't even seem good or even usable, let alone worth the money it costed. So we call Harbor Freight and talk about all of the issues and our situation and all of that, and they inform us that the mixer we got was the last in their current stock, and the next closest Harbor Freight was also out of those mixers. The next Harbor Freight after that wasn't very close at all, but did have some, but we had a major problem with our transportation at the time as it was. It was also getting later in the day at that point, so we were running out of potential solutions and also generally time as well. After a while of thinking, my dad recalls that apparently one of our neighbors worked in some sort of construction as well. I don't remember how he knew this, but he did, and it was seeming to be our last resort. So we walked over to the neighbor's house and knocked on the door. The guy wasn't there, but his wife or girlfriend was. So we explained our conundrum, and she's like, yeah, he has one in the backyard, and she calls him with FaceTime or some app like that. Then we explain our issues to the guy as well, and he says, yeah, we can borrow the mixer. This one doesn't have roadworthy tires, but is lighter and is made by Ryobi. So we pulled the thing from his backyard to our backyard manually by hand, which is not easy in Arizona because Arizona doesn't have great housing situations with the paving and such usually, and in general, unless you live in one of these big compound areas, but then you wouldn't be doing much cement mixing. But we got ready for the next day because it's just too late at that point to really be able to get anything done, and we were tired from just the exhausting long experience that we had. So while that day was squandered, we now did have a solution that would be reliable. And from there we were actually able to start mixing the concrete. After a few sessions of using the mixer, we bought one of our own, the exact same model, though we never actually used it throughout the first layer of concrete. But it was still lucky that we had bought our own because we messed up on the first layer of concrete despite all of our careful planning and setting up, so we needed to create a second layer to get it proper. Anyway, that was our journey with using personal electric mixers. There's not a lot to be learned from this story, I guess, other than beware of the Harbor Freight personal mixer. Since the mixer frames were bent in the exact same way, we think that both were possibly just damaged in shipping rather than being actually produced wrong. So I guess there's some advice for you. Additionally, we really like our Ryobi mixer. It may not be easy to transport from job site to job site unless you have a hauling bed you can get it on and strap it onto, but it has been a reliable little thing. It can hold, I think, around 3 bags of Quikrete, which I think were 60-pound bags. It has an actual on-off switch, which is nice, and it's also protected so that water shouldn't get inside the electronics. And generally, our neighbors and ours have been troopers throughout our use with them. They do what they're advertised to, at least. This channel doesn't normally talk about construction or anything like that, but I do talk about playing guitar, drums, and bass along with products around those subjects. I also talk about various 3D printing subjects and electronics projects occasionally, and on cases like today, I just do what I want. So if any of that sounds good, please consider subscribing. Please check the description for ways to support me. Normally there are affiliate links, but I'm not sure if I have any that apply here. There may be nothing, but I would still appreciate it if you would check it out anyway. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. That's all I have to say for now, so I'm gonna say bye-bye.